We are live on YouTube. It's the Rich Lieberman Media Pulse, and it is Friday. Even for many of us who regard Friday as just another day, it could be Monday, it could be Tuesday. I do a lot of work every day, and therefore my Friday is like Monday. But who's asking? I'm glad you asked. I know you don't care, but I thought I would talk about it. Look, I want to talk today about Saturday Night Live, and all I keep hearing is, well, there's news, and somebody's leaving, somebody's staying, somebody's leaving, people are staying, and none of these people, by the way, you've never heard of. Well, I know I've never heard of. And which brings me to the larger point, and that is, when's the last time that Saturday Night Live was funny? Oh, periodically they do little bits and try to keep up with current events in the news and all that. And okay, a chuckle or two. But Saturday Night Live long ago lost its luster, long ago really mattered. And nowadays it's just another show. Now, for NBC, at one point, even in its latter iterations and all that, made a lot of money for NBC, which is only one of the reasons why they keep it afloat, is to, butter the bread for NBC and Comcast, and to keep Lorne Michaels, its longtime director and ombudsman, afloat also, to a tune of $20 million a year. Not to mention, he gets percentages of the merchandise that NBC makes off of Saturday Night Live. Now, I'm going to go back to the central point. This show has not been funny for years. I mean, it had its first run, of course, 50 years ago. 50 years, can you believe that? 1975, when it really was funny. And I know in later years, it got back to being funny and relevant again, especially the years with Eddie Murphy and Joe Piscopo and, Billy Crystal and all that. But that's a long, long time ago, folks. And look, I'll applaud NBC for keeping their franchise on the air. Why? Because it makes them a lot of money, tunes of upwards of $100 million, and they have virtually no competition. And of course, look, we have a different world. We have the internet. We have all these vices and streaming channels and the internet and all that. I get all that. They have bigger competition. But my point is, does anybody say, geez, did you see that on SNL? Did you watch such and such? And they kept making this largely thanks to the culture media today. This Colin Jost and the other guy who does Weekend Update, which is the only relevant part of the show. The sketches have long been abandoned. They're not that funny. In fact, they're not funny, period. And which begs the question, what the hell is, as an artistic asset, what is NBC doing with Saturday Night Live? Nothing. And they don't have to. I mean, look, the numbers are way, 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 way down. Nobody stays up to watch that show. The only people who watch that show happen to be home and who have a television on and are not glued to their smartphone or their smart TV watching a movie. But very few people still watch network television, even Saturday Night Live, but enough to where it still generates an immense amount of profit, does Saturday Night Live. This is a little side story before I get back to what I was going to talk about with regards to SNL. A lot of people don't know this, but these actors and actresses on Saturday Night Live, okay, they don't get any of the residuals off of the merchandise that is sold. You would think they do. It all goes to the network. None of it goes to the actors or actresses. Secondly, and this is something that is not very well known either, and NBC will deny this if there was an actual reporter out there who did a story about this. But I know this because I know a lot of people in the business and people who have been involved with this, whether they're artists or comedians or what have you. This has been told to me many a times. Most of the players, the so-called not ready for prime time players, the actors and actresses who do the bits and the sketches that you see on Saturday Night Live, a lot of them are very young, very young. If you're a woman and you're beyond 30, and this has kind of been the standard rule in Hollywood for motion pictures for a long time, but it is surely and really the case at Saturday Night Live. You're going to learn something today, folks. Very rarely do they go with a woman over 30, unless they've been somewhat, on the cast, unless they become stars. They routinely do not pick women who are trying to get on that show. With men, it's the same thing. Men are a little bit in more of a friendlier situation. But here's the heart and soul of what I'm trying to say in this regard also. You have to be in your early to mid 20s to even be considered to be on Saturday Night Live. And I'm talking about the ensemble, the people that do the sketches. They don't go after anybody, and it's really really more pronounced for women and in a tougher situation than it is for men. But you have to be in your 20s, you have to have that look, and like anything else in life, you have to be lucky. And you can have the greatest resume, and you could be this and that, you could have traveled around the country and be a top performer in terms of stand-up comic, what have you. If you're out, let's just say, and they get a lot of these people from New York City, and mostly they're comedians, maybe LA or Chicago, but most of all, this has been told to me by many comedians, that to get on Saturday Night Live, and I'm not talking about a guest host. Usually the guest host is somebody who's, made it really big, an established actor, comedian like a Steve Martin or people like that. And they go after pop stars and all that, maybe involved in another industry, singers. In fact, I'm waiting for them to, this might be way, way, way above their pay grade. Even NBC is to snag Taylor Swift. Think about that for a moment. I think she'd be one. I'm saying this off the top of my head. Did she not do a Saturday Night Live as a guest host? I'm just saying this off the top of my head. But if she hasn't, this would be the prime area of regular commercial network television, in which case you'd have, obviously, record ratings. You'd have a chance to see Taylor Swift in a non-traditional way in which she's possibly, well, of course she'd be doing comedy and sketches and things of that nature. I think she'd really enjoy herself, in addition to singing one or two songs. Might even be a great time to center on that now, being that she's got a new album coming out. And of course, her albums don't sell any records, right? So she really could use the publicity. Any event, I think, could be a master stroke. And I'm sure they thought about it, but to get her to perform and to do a show like that, who knows? Maybe they've already put out the feelers. But back to Saturday Night Live. It's difficult as a performer to get on there if you're in your late 20s or beyond 30. Really, really more difficult. So when I hear these stories and read these accounts about a new cast, people have been replaced, people have, been repositioned, I say to myself, who cares? Anybody out there? Not only do you do, I mean, this is basically friendly showbiz stories that appear in the trades, like a Variety or the Hollywood Reporter or the Daily Beast. The average Joe and John who don't, again, watch network television, let alone Saturday Night Live, don't give a damn because Saturday Night Live hasn't been funny for, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 years. And as I mentioned, I know periodically there's something funny and they do a sketch that, factors in the news of the week or time, that kind of a thing. I don't think they're going to be doing any news that we had in the past couple of days, if you know what I mean. Any sketches on that front. But it just simply is not funny anymore. Remember, they used to be funny, and it was not just weekend roundup where they had the news and all that. And for the life of me, I can't laugh at this Colin Jost or the other guy, whoever. I forgot his name and I really don't know, and it really doesn't matter. But the sketches are always lately not funny, which brings me back to SNL. It's not it's not an appointment television. I remember when it was appointment television back when I was growing up in high school and junior high in the late 70s. And then yes, they had absolutely bizarre, not funny, boring, bad eras like that time they had that guy on well, they've had many people on, but it really wasn't funny. It got funny again around the early 80s when they got Billy Crystal and Eddie Murphy. I mean, who knew, right? With the James Brown and all of his characters. Of course, Billy Crystal. And, you were marvelous, darling, and he did that. And he did other sketches, Howard Cosell and Sammy Davis Jr. But after that, and you've had some periodic ensembles that were funny, but the sketches were not. And, it's sad to say this, but I think the only funny person left on that show is the director, the creator himself, Lorne Michaels, when he does these cameo bits. But he's now, what, in his late 70s, making globs of money. And NBC is going to keep the show on until it just is, that was one of the things with the Stephen Colbert, the Late Show. It cost upwards of $100 million a year to put that show on the air. And CBS, I think it was just a matter of money. They weren't making any money off of that show. And by the way, I'm not defending CBS nor making any accusations with regards to Stephen Colbert. I didn't find the guy funny anymore because he was just doing predictable political shit. And, when I tune into that kind of a show, I'm not looking to be lectured about politics and the latest, you know, goings on with regards to Donald Trump. I want to see comedy. I want to see a good interview, and by and large, Colbert does a good job. But it become too predictable. A lot of people just stopped tuning in. Advertisers flocked. And yes, there was political reverberations and all that. I'm sure CBS, which was doing this sale with Paramount and all that, I know all about that too. Did it have an impact? Of course it did. Bottom line is, though, a lot of these shows just simply don't register anymore. They don't have the kind of numbers. They haven't had these, pre-internet numbers for years now, but they identified themselves as their own kind of loyal followings, and they'd have, 2, 3, 4 million people. Nowadays, not even a fraction of that. That's the deal with Colbert. Didn't warrant the amount of money that it cost to produce that show, given the location, the upkeep, the having a band, live orchestra, all that, you know, producers and directors, all that. Just wasn't making enough money. And the other stuff, which of course it played a part. But back to SNL. I rarely watch it. The only time I seem to watch it is when it's on YouTube and they play back various, sketches that make some sense of comedic timing and are funny. But that's been a long time. Now, what they're doing, and they get lucky if they can do this, is to have former players back on the primetime guys that made it big, like Dana Carvey or Steve Martin or, John Lovitz. Unfortunately, that's more of the exception rather than the norm. But my overall point, tell me, really, the last time you laughed, for that matter, tuned in to Saturday Night Live. And look, we are the era now, the society of the short attention span theater, where it takes a lot to keep somebody for an hour, minus commercials and all that. So, all I'm saying is all this news about these people are staying, this couple is being forced out. Saturday Night Live is making news because such and such is leaving or they fire. Who gives a damn anymore? Nobody cares. And look, do I lament that? Of course. But to borrow a cliche, it is what it is. Now, I am going to be back, I hope, later on. If not tonight, I will be back tomorrow, usually around 5 o'clock Pacific and, of course, 8 o'clock East Coast time. If you want to subscribe to my channel, boy, is it your lucky day, then subscribe, for God's sakes. You can email me at rich.lieberman@gmail.com. You can also send me a text at 415-999-4454. And you can also pick up the phone and talk to me. I may be busy. I may be in my leotards with my beautiful print leopard bedspread, talking to Howard Stern. Baba Booey to you, too, in any event. So, but we'll talk today about culture. Look, obviously, the news of the day and the last couple of days talk about a perfectly apt realization, a description of the world in which we live in, is the gruesome murder of Charlie Kirk, the subsequent shows, the pundits having their punditry out there, and then, of course, the morning press conference, the video images that were released, the still pictures that were released, and looks like they got their man. Looks just like the guy. I like how these people. Well, it resembles the guy. That's the guy. Unless we're being told something different. So we're going to get that news for the next couple of days, and already they're in their other gear and all that. So we could talk about that too. And if you want to talk about how the media covered it in subsequent future days, on, of course, we're going to have a trial more than likely, and they'll send their crime reporters and their legal and crime analyses into high gear, because then that they can put that on the docket. I noticed today Trump wants a very swift and fast trial. So conceivably, this could all, begin in a matter of a few months, right? Just in time for Thanksgiving, a very, very juicy trial involving something and someone involved in a very gruesome murder that was played out before all of us in terms of we being able to watch this guy's execution. So I will probably be back later. If you want to check out my social media at Twitter, X, I am at Rich415Media. You can also just Google me, and we'll talk about the various goings on in America as we approach the middle of this very fast September 2025. It is soon to be Saturday. We're here live in the Bay Area on a Friday afternoon into the early evening. Your weekend is getting off the ground, and you've been watching Rich Lieberman, and you can watch Rich later on as I conveniently refer to myself in the third person and give you an update as to what you can look forward to. Again, folks, please subscribe to my channel. We'll talk about Laura Owens too, and Ron Owens, and the whole Jan Black, the whole 9 yards will be live, and I will see you later. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.